We are all aware of these kind of pictures and issues of medical negligence, some real, some frivolous. We are also aware of the compensations awarded, some reasonable, some unreasonable. So let us understand the concept of compensation in medical litigations. The trend in the last 2 decades has been from 1 to 2 lakhs earlier, growing to 5 to 10 lakhs, then to 1 crore, and the latest that we heard in 2013 was 6 crores with an interest amounting to 5 crores, and we don't know how far it will go. The irony is that of all cases filed on medical negligence, only about 15% cases are reportedly genuine. Yet, the number of cases are increasing, number of compensation claimed is increasing, the amount of compensation awarded is increasing. However, penalty for frivolous cases is still capped at a maximum of rupees 10,000 only. Are we treating the malady with the wrong medicine, or the treatment is proving to be worse than the malady? Is there any objectivity in calculating compensation? Errors and mistakes do happen. Complications and deaths can happen even without errors and mistakes. It's God's will. Yes, the victim should be compensated, but the compensation should not be out of proportion to the element of negligence that caused the injury. And it should certainly not be arbitrary, subjective, or prejudiced. Compensation awarded on the basis of sympathy or benefit of doubt or poor understanding of the medical issues cannot be just. The concept of compensation is to make good the loss suffered as a result of the wrong, as far as money can compensate. It should be just, adequate, and equitable. It is not penalty or punishment for the defendant. Similarly, it is not a bonanza or a lottery for enrichment of the complainant. It is based on the doctrine of restitutio ad integrum, which means the person seeking damages due to a wrong committed to him should be brought back in the position that he would have been had the wrong not been committed, to the extent that money can do. It is usually quantified as loss of income plus medical expenses plus pain and suffering. Now, what is the impact of this rising quantum of compensation? Defensive medicine, increase in cost of healthcare, increase in insurance premiums, low threshold for litigations, increasing claim amounts, greater involvement of lawyers and their ways, protracted litigations, heavy litigation costs, discouragement to students from taking up medical profession as a career. Now, how is compensation generally calculated? There are a number of formulae. The usual ones are depicted here. MACT formula, which is used mostly in road traffic accident cases. Since it is compulsory for motor vehicles to have third-party insurance, the compensation is paid by the insurance company in terms of no-fault liability. In railways, there is a predetermined fixed amount based on death or degree of injury and disability. Similarly, for airlines, it's predetermined fixed amounts for delays, losses, and victims of air crash. There is a political formula. Whenever some deaths or injuries occur, which have political fallouts, they are compensated to contain that fallout. This may be natural calamities or man-made disasters. In most of these claims, the compensation comes from the public funds, from the taxpayers' money. It doesn't come from the pocket of the person who caused the injury. Compensation awards in medical negligence. The compensation is paid by the doctor or the hospital unless he has a valid professional insurance policy. By and large, it's a subjective approach. Efforts are being made to bring objectivity to this exercise. It is still evolving. We need to think out of the box to bring objectivity and fairness to both the parties. Helping one unfairly at the expense of the other is not necessarily just and equitable compensation. The government and the activists encourage high compensation in medical negligence, and the courts often get swayed by this public sentiment. The compensation grew from few lakhs to 1 crore in the case of NIMS versus Prasant S. Dhananka, decided by the Supreme Court in 2009, and then rose to 6 crores plus interest amount of 5 crores in the case of Kunal Saha versus AMRI Hospital, Kolkata, decided in 2013. The compensation formula used in medical negligence is usually one of these three formulae: MACT formula, a lump sum formula, and the Kunal Saha case precedent. Sarla Verma case 2009 is a landmark judgment where details were discussed about compensation in Motor Vehicle Act as well as in medical negligence cases. It emphasized on just, adequate, and equitable compensation with objectivity in calculation. It elaborated on the multiplier method, and they tried to plug the holes that existed. Now, what is this multiplier method? This method uses two terms, multiplicand and multiplier. Multiplicand is the yearly loss of earning plus inflation factor minus the amount he would have consumed on himself. And multiplier is the life expectancy minus age minus years. He is likely to be unproductive due to the special risk factors like old age, accident, disability, and so on. Generally, the multiplier does not exceed 16 to 18. And multiplicand multiplied by multiplier gives the amount of compensation. It has certain serious flaws. For example, a person with no earnings, child, non-working adult, retired person, they'll have no multiplicand. In such situations, the court assumes a figure of his pecuniary worth. Then rich persons will get higher compensation as compared to the poor with similar element of negligence. In lump sum compensation, the court gives out the details of the arguments from both the sides, and in the end it says, in view of the above, it will serve the ends of justice if a lump sum amount of such and such is awarded against respondent so and so. This is purely arbitrary, whimsical, fanciful, and purely subjective. The multiplier method was rejected in the NIMS case and Kunal Saha case by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said the multiplier method was provided for convenience and speedy disposal of no-fault motor accident cases. Therefore, obviously, a no-fault motor vehicle accident should not be compared with the case of death from medical negligence under any condition. However, compensation that is solely based on the income of the victim would imply that medical negligence causing death or injury to a highly paid individual is worth more than medical negligence that impacts a poor man or a non-working person. The Supreme Court has therefore refused to restrict compensation to the multiplier method in the case of medical negligence. Further, the Supreme Court has added other dimensions to the calculation of compensation in a realistic manner, such as the ongoing medical costs, cost of future medical expenses, compensation towards mental agony, and compensation towards loss of consortium and cost of litigation. There is a dilemma before the courts. The law needs to protect a victim's rights. The law also needs to provide due autonomy to the medical profession. That, by all definitions, is an inexact science. Our dilemma is doctors and hospitals think that generally the compensation is unfairly high. Activists think that generally the compensation is unfairly low. The government is now planning to increase the pecuniary jurisdiction of the consumer courts. The district courts, which had a jurisdiction of 20 lakhs, is now being hiked to 1 crore. For state commissions, where the jurisdiction was 1 crore, it is being increased to 10 crores. And for National Commission, where it was more than 1 crore, it will now be more than 10 crores. And also the new bill is adding provisions to discourage appeals. Now, what are the options for solution? Capping the quantum of compensation. This is a trend in some US states. We may cap it by having an upper limit, or make it, say, 10 times or 20 times the expenditure incurred for the services taken. The other option is making medical negligence a no-fault liability. This option exists in New Zealand, Denmark, and Sweden. An unconditional fixed financial support to the victims of alleged medical negligence without any bearing on the ultimate merits of the case. The compensation can be paid either by the insurance company or from the corpus fund of the state. Or a special tribunal may be created which determines the compensation payable to the victim purely on the basis of the injury suffered without having to determine the actual negligence on the part of any party. This will follow the no-fault liability principle. Now, what is this no-fault liability? The claimant files a complaint to the insurance company which has indemnified the doctor and the hospital. A surveyor makes an assessment and sends his report. The insurance company makes the payment. In case of dissatisfaction, the patient escalates to the appellate authority of the insurance companies or files a petition in the civil courts. For special categories and special circumstances, the payment may be made from the corpus fund of the state. In addition to this forum, the patient can still approach the medical council or NMC for professional misconduct or criminal courts for criminal negligence. There are some advantages and disadvantages of no-fault liability. Advantages are, it's simpler, broader, and quicker rendering of justice. It reduces load on the courts, reduces involvement of lawyers, reflects community responsibility. It will promote better reporting of adverse events and result in better analysis of such data for greater chances of learning to improve patient safety, and will improve doctor-patient relationship. There are some disadvantages. Awards given are usually lower, though quicker. Corpus fund to be billed by the state. Proper eligibility criteria and exclusion criteria to be defined. Not sure whether it will improve patient safety. Accountability of doctors and hospitals may take a hit. New methods of fake and fabricated claims and corrupt practices may begin. May push patients towards criminal complaints more often than now. And insurance premiums will skyrocket. There can be some checks and balances. Rational eligibility criteria for claimants. Rational eligibility criteria for doctors and hospitals. Proper and clear exclusion criteria. Independent surveyors to assess claims. Provision for appeal. Person not eligible under no-fault liability scheme may approach the civil courts. There can be alternate dispute redressal mechanisms, conciliation, mediation, arbitration. These can be court-monitored or independent. It can result in quicker and smoother resolution of disputes. There can be some other options. Banned representation by lawyers, at least in the original jurisdiction. Lawyers may be allowed in the appeal. This will make the process much simpler and quicker. Increase penalty for frivolous litigations. Even if the penalty is increased from 10,000 rupees to 5 lakhs, it will decrease frivolous complaints. We must also have clear criteria for labeling a complaint as frivolous so that it is not difficult to prove it. We may link the penalty for frivolous litigation to the amount of compensation claimed, say 50 to 80% of the claimed amount plus costs. That will automatically reduce the claim amounts without any need to cap it. So in conclusion, I would like to stress that the governments and the courts today are prejudiced against medical practitioners for reasons best known to them. Rising consumer court cases and rising compensation amounts don't bother them. The government wants to increase the pecuniary jurisdiction of consumer courts, perhaps under pressure from activists and the vote banks. No-fault liability appears to be a good option to pursue. A lot depends upon how we, as a profession, can unite to provide options which address this malady and also convince the lawmakers for a rational and realistic approach. Thank you.